Donald Trump is in the building. You can't tell by the crowd noise, though, at all. Wow.
Saturday for the whole country, where he had that leadership literally under fire.
Welcome the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
And I had to start again, just my children and my wife. When I'm free, I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me.
Winston Churchill famously said, "Nothing in life is so exhilarating as to be shot at without effect." And you could see that today. The idea that just hours ago, a few days ago, this man, an assassin's bullet whizzed by him, hit him in the ear, inches from his temple. It'd be just by the slightest fraction of an inch. He survived, shot at without effect, and you can see the joy of this crowd. I got to tell you, as somebody who's been covering these conventions since 1964, that may have been the most electric moment I ever saw. That was quite extraordinary.
Man, there's just nobody in America today who is quite like Donald Trump. Nobody that can match his show of resilience, of fighting spirit, and ultimately just his aura, just his legendary presence amidst this entire situation. And folks, before we get into today's video, I want to tell something to the audience I've been trying to tell myself throughout this election cycle, which is whether you're watching the RNC on TV or the internet or you're there in person, just observing this election cycle, take it all in, folks. I mean, I really mean that. Take that all in, because this is not any ordinary election you are ever going to see again in your life. You are in the middle of history. And if you're at a Trump rally, if you're at the RNC right now, you are quite literally standing in the middle of history. So don't let that kind of slip past your head. I mean, these are historic times. You're never going to see anyone in our politics like Donald Trump quite again. So I encourage you all to truly take a step back, especially in this video, and appreciate it. And with that said, what am I talking about? Well, I played a little bit of it in the hook there, and unfortunately, we cannot play the full thing with the audio because it is copyrighted because of the song. But Donald Trump just made his grand triumphant return to public life at the RNC. He kind of came as a surprise. You remember he announced yesterday, very last minute, he was going to delay his trip to Milwaukee till Wednesday, so that way he just goes there and makes the speech. But in a show of courage and a show of strength, he put out a public statement. And I think his exact words were, "We are not going to allow a shooter to change our schedule," something like that. So he just straight up said, "I don't care, injured or just got shot and all, I am still going to show up to the RNC as expected." And you saw him here in this video. He does have a bandage over his ear. That's to be expected. He did confirm today that a chunk of the ear actually has been taken off. But, you heard it in the hook, at least the portions of it. But just the aura, the energy of this response. I mean, when he was walking through that tunnel, it reminded me of watching like Goldberg in WCW and the WWF, like watching those clips on YouTube. This actually not arguably, I think definitively is the coolest entrance I've seen in the history of politics and potentially the history of anything, because it's real, right? This is, I just don't know even how to describe it. Trump's 2016 RNC entrance, if you'll remember, the "We Are the Champions," he came like the stage rose up. That was pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. That was legendary, but it wasn't quite as heavy. It wasn't quite the moment that you heard today, where he walks out a little bit injured, but things over his ear, but also the reception he got from the crowd. And it's very interesting because we were streaming the whole RNC today, and some of the vibes during the event were just whatever, it's like they were doing these weird concerts and some of the speeches were good, some were bad. It was, everyone was just kind of, stringing along. I kid you not. And anyone who was there in Milwaukee, I'm sure you could tell me this, but I could even see it from, just streaming it, watching it on the internet. The moment that Donald Trump entered that convention center, the entire mood, the entire energy of that place changed. It came alive. And you saw a couple of good speeches after that. The Teamsters Union president did actually go on and speak in front of Donald Trump. And that's going to be a big deal, especially considering, the unions historically are, big supporters to the Democrats. He went out and said, we're not endorsing anyone. And he actually gave, I thought, a pretty good speech that some Republican donors might not agree with, but I think most working people do. And you heard that noise, that roar in the convention center. But again, that's not necessarily the story. The story here is, of course, Trump with arguably like the most amazing optics in the history of politics, right? As if you couldn't get any better than standing, blood coming down his face, saying, fight, fight, USA, USA. Arguably, he tops it here, right? Because in contrast, and this is not to like make it nasty or whatever with the political opponent, but in contrast to his political opponent in this race, who, has to go to bed at 4 p.m. every day. He, can't take questions from the press ever. Here's a man on the flip side who just got shot and, right after that is walking out, bandage ear and all, and he's saying, I'm here. Here I am, right? And so that's a lot to talk about. I also noticed, and if you were watching the rest of this, so when other speakers gave their speeches, right, Trump did not speak tonight, but when he was sitting there in the crowd, he did go up, he greeted Tucker Carlson and Byron Donalds there in that crowd, and he was sitting there. There seems to be, I will say this, a very different look on Donald Trump's face. I don't know, you can see it in his eyes, and by the way, that's completely understandable. That's completely real, right? This type of experience will absolutely do that to you. But there's something in his face you can see that is just a little more humble, perhaps maybe grateful to be alive. I'm not exactly sure how to frame it, but he kind of was just as a different Donald Trump, I would say. And as much as maybe a lot of us enjoy or we will miss the old Donald Trump, I think it's undeniable. There's a brand new Donald Trump that has been born out of this moment. And it seems to me almost like a humbler Donald Trump, a more grateful Donald Trump, but arguably, maybe on some levels, a morally better Donald Trump, right? I don't know. I'm not sure how to read into it or say it, but you'd have to imagine that, a moment like this absolutely does change a man. And that's what we saw. But yeah, folks, I mean, there you have it. RNC day one just wrapped up. Not much to talk about. Couple good speeches, couple so moments, so speeches. But like I said, I streamed that RNC for about like 2 hours. The moment this guy came on the stage, everything changed. Right? You had a totally different situation going on. And honestly, that's all I really remember at this point. That is all it is, right? Because I remember at the beginning of the RNC, I was looking at some of the video packages. I was like, meh, they had these concerts, these bands were performing on stage in between the speeches. And I was like, this is not a good flow. So this speech was okay. This is all I'm going to remember from day one of the RNC. So in my opinion, day one of the RNC, to recap here, a huge victory, okay? Huge victory. Forget the speeches. A couple of them were good, but forget the speeches. This is what day one of the RNC was all about. And of course, we are thankful that President Trump is okay. God stepped in. I still believe that on that day. Yeah, I don't know. There you have it, folks. Like I said, history you are witnessing here. All right. See you guys later. God bless. Peace.